Hi first graders, it's Miss Lee here, and today we're going to read a story called The Curious Garden. You can follow along on HMH or log on and read this by yourself on HMH after we're done. When we're reading, we're going to also look and see if we can make a couple inferences. Can you say inference? Good. Inference. An inference is something new that we're going to look at really slowly this week, so we're not going to pay too much of attention to it during this video. But an inference is when you take something that you know and combine it with something new to figure something out, kind of like you're being a detective. But like I said, we're just going to enjoy the story today, and we'll talk about inferences more tomorrow. So this story is called The Curious Garden, and it's by Peter Brown. And again, you can log on to iRead on HMH on your web desk, and we've assigned this story to you so you can read it there also. All right. The Curious Garden. Okay, here's my dedication page. And it says it's for my curious grandmother, Petey. So the author wrote this book for his grandmother. Here's the title page, The Curious Garden. There once was a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. What do you think the word dreary means if it was a very dreary place? Yeah, probably not a very happy place, kind of a sad place. I see a lot of smoke and a lot of gray. It doesn't look like a very fun place to me. However, there was one boy who loved being outside, even on drizzly days while everyone else stayed inside. You could always find Liam happily splashing through the neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up the tracks. So it looks like he was under the tracks and he sees this stairwell that will allow him to go up. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. So right here is where we can make an inference. We know that Liam is curious, and we know that there's something up there. So what would our inference be that he would do? He's going to climb up and go see. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last things he had expected to find up there, but when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. So we can make another inference and think about what we know about Liam, how he loves outside, and how we know what these plants need, and we can probably guess that Liam's going to try to be the gardener for these plants. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. So he couldn't get it right the first time. He had a hard time, but he kept on working. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the curious garden explored every corner of the railway. Look how far his garden is growing. That's amazing. This page doesn't have any words, so I just want you to look at it and make your own opinions about what you think's happening. Wow. So they're exploring the railway together, him, Liam, and his garden. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. I wonder what's going to be going through his mind or what he's going to be thinking about. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. So he's getting ready for spring when he can garden again. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken a toll on the garden. So let's make an inference. Think about what you know about Liam and what type of person he is and how he feels about his garden. And look at the garden now after winter. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think Liam's going to do? But thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. The garden had always wanted to explore. There we go. The rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up further and farther from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The plants want to grow all over the city, not just the railway. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. So the plants are growing in old things, piles of junk, on cars, on old things that other people in the city might have forgotten about. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. So you've got plants growing on the stop sign. That could be dangerous if people can't see. Plants growing on the fire hydrant. That could be dangerous. The firemen would need that to put out a fire. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. What do you think Liam is doing? But the most surprising things that popped up were new gardeners. What do you think that means? Look at all of these gardeners down here. What do we think the impact that Liam has had on the city is? He worked so hard on his garden, and remember, it was a very dreary city at the beginning, and now look at it. Wow, Liam made a big change in his city. Does it look like such a dreary place now? I think it looks magical. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed, but of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. Wow. Look at the city now. So I'm going to go to the first page before Liam grew his garden. The very beginning of the book, here was the city. The dreary, gloomy city. He worked really hard on his garden, and now look at the city. So this book just shows you that you can really make a difference all on your own. The author wrote us a note in the back. I'm going to read that and then we'll be done. It often seems impossible for nature to thrive in a city of concrete and brick and steel. But the more I've traveled and the closer I've looked at the world around me, the more I've realized that nature is always eagerly exploring the places that we've forgotten. You can find flowers and fields and even small forests growing wild in every city. You just have to look for them. On the west side of Manhattan, there is an old elevated railway called the High Line. Its trains rumbled high above the city streets for decades, but in 1980 the High Line was shut down and forgotten. Without people and trains getting in the way, nature was free to redecorate. Over the years, the rusty rails and gravel slowly gave way to wildflowers and trees. And if you look at the railway today, you'll see a lush garden that curves above the streets and between buildings. From grass bursting through cracks in the sidewalk or a tuft of goldenrod clinging to a brick wall to a meadow winding along on an abandoned railway, nature can thrive in the unlikeliest of places. All of this made me curious. What would happen if an entire city decided to truly cooperate with nature? How would that city change? How would it all begin? Peter Brown. That's his note at the end. So now that you're done with this story, like I said, you can go read it for yourself on HMH and look at the pictures more closely. And I just want you to think about how the city changed over time and think about the changes we've been talking about through this unit and how we have discussed how living things share resources and how we can share plants and animals and how there's room for wildlife to grow everywhere, even in our city. I hope you enjoyed this story, boys and girls. I really enjoyed reading it with you today, and I hope you have a super, super awesome Monday. Bye!